Joining us, New York Times investigative correspondent Mark Mazzetti, who broke this Times exclusive. Yeah, it is shocking, Mark. I was shocked when I read this. Why did they think Ahmadinejad was suddenly somebody that they could work with?
Well, we recall in the first couple of days after the war, President Trump indicated that what they really needed was someone from the inside who could take over, who could kind of run the machinery of government, and not someone who they would just parachute in from the outside, because it's unclear whether that person would be accepted. It's still unclear why this mostly has started out as an Israeli plan, designated Ahmadinejad as that person, because obviously, as you just laid out his history, this hardline former leader, his denial of the Holocaust, his calls for wiping Israel off the map, not necessarily the person you would think would be the natural person to be installed by the Israelis in the United States. And of course, the next question being, how would he be accepted by the people of Iran? So, I mean, there's still a lot of questions about how this came about, but clearly this shows, it's further evidence that the Trump administration and the Israelis did this war very much for regime change, right? It wasn't just to, hit the nuclear sites, et cetera. It was to change the government into a more pliable one for them.
Why have they abandoned it with Ahmadinejad? Were they talking to him, secretly before this and getting him on board with this?
We do believe there was contact, that he was on board with this plan. We're trying to learn more details about exactly how that went down. What ended up happening, as we reported in our story, was on the first day, there was a strike at his compound, which was reported. And in fact, there were some reports that he had been killed. But the strike was not a leadership strike. It was actually meant as a sort of jailbreak to get him out of house arrest, where he had been under. And yet that went awry when, instead of just killing his guards and freeing him, that injured Ahmadinejad himself, and he apparently became sort of disillusioned with this plan. And then that, was that for the time being.
So back in 2019, Ahmadinejad did an interview with the New York Times, and here's what he said about Donald Trump. He called him a man of action. He said he's a businessman, and therefore he's capable of calculating cost benefits and making a decision. We say to him, let's calculate the long-term cost benefit of our two nations and not be short-sighted. I wonder, Mark, do you have any reporting suggesting that this goes back, these conversations potentially go back, or a long time, where Donald Trump felt more warmly towards Ahmadinejad because he had said, relatively nice things about him in the New York Times back in 2019?
We don't have evidence yet of that. Right now, we, as I said, it primarily seems to have been developed as an Israeli plan to do the strike to get Ahmadinejad in power. Certainly there was American sign-off to a degree on this, but no yet evidence that this is something Trump had been on board with for a long time, because he recalls fondly these sort of exchanges he'd had with Ahmadinejad. I mean, there's a lot, clearly, more to learn about this story.
So Donald Trump the other day said that he was calling off a planned attack that was going to happen alongside a number of our allies in the region, the UAE, I think Qatar and Saudi Arabia, if I'm listing those correctly. They were all planning on attacking Iran together. Have we gotten any indication from those allies that they were willing to attack alongside the U.S., that they were going to strike as well?
We have reported that some of those countries did their own strikes at certain points in the last couple of weeks on their own, but not necessarily that this was a part of this massive joint attack that was going to happen simultaneously. And, indications we get from different Gulf countries is, they would like to see the war, wind down rather than escalate. But it's, in terms of what they're communicating privately to the White House is another matter. And that's why I think we're sort of going to see this continue to play out, where, Trump might be interested in doing more rounds of strikes, or might just be using other countries' lack of eagerness as a reason not to do it.
All right, Mark Mazzetti, really good to have you. Thank you so much. Again, such a surprising story you had in the Times regarding Ahmadinejad.
Thank you.
Thank you again.